We have a relatively full agenda, so let's get right into it. Item one is annual investment report update from our Chief Financial Officer and John Grady.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Bridget Souffrant, Chief Financial Officer. I'm here today with John Rarbach, our newer Treasury Manager.
Oh, okay.
Newer. John has been here with us for just over 6 months now, so excited. This might be your first time having met him, so introducing him. I am also incredibly pleased to have our new Assistant ACFO, Avril Smith, here with us today. So almost a full house in finance. Very excited. We are also thrilled to have John Grady, Managing Director and Partner, and our Primary Relationship Manager here with us from Public Trust Advisors to present
Ms. Souffrant, before you go any further, can you just kind of maybe give your new team members 30 seconds, 45 seconds to introduce themselves? And
Sure.
Welcome to the team, everyone. John and Avril.
Come on up, gentlemen and lady.
Good morning, John Rarbach. I've been in the finance arena for a little over 30 years. I've had approximately 18 years in the private sector and another 15 in government. So I've just moved down from Bryan County, Georgia, where I was the finance director. But this is home. I grew up in Palm Beach Gardens.
Oh, wow, wow.
So glad to be back home.
Well, welcome to the team. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My district.
Four. Good morning, Avril Smith, newly transplanted from New York, not missing the weather.
Not many people do that these days.
8 years in government. I was a controller in the town of North Hempstead and the director of finance for the town of Hempstead. Most recently worked for the village of Malvern as the administrator, which is the treasurer and the clerk. Happy to be here, very happy to be here.
Well, welcome to the team. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Ms. Souffrant.
Of course. Thank you for being unpredictable this Monday morning. No, it's okay. See, then we get to see their personalities come out. We're good.
I'm sorry.
So we are here for the second annual investment report. Just as a reminder, per the city's charter, we have an investment committee that consists of internal personnel who meet quarterly to oversee the management of a portion of the city's assets. The assets that are currently under management with Public Trust Advisors are funds that are not needed at the present time based on our cash flow projections, nor are they spoken for with specific intent, such as our bond dollars. The annual investment report today will cover a brief economic outlook from our friends at Public Trust, and then John will discuss our investment strategies covering our liquid portfolio, our core portfolio, and the restricted cash in the presentation. Without further ado, John Grady with Public Trust.
Thank you, Ms. Souffrant. Mayor James, Commissioners, John Grady with Public Trust Advisors. It's a pleasure to be here again this year. It's when I do these annual reports, it just reminds me of how quickly time flies. But I hope that 2024 is off to a good start for all of you. And of course, lots of great things have been happening for many years here at the city. And I've been fortunate to work with the city for a number of those years, and very thankful to be a part of that and to work with your team. So as we did last year, we'll just spend a few minutes on an economic update covering some of the indicators that we discuss with the investment committee when we meet quarterly. But just as a highlight, if we go back a year ago, inflation was 6.5%, unemployment was 3.5%, GDP was 2.9%. The Fed was in the midst of one of the most aggressive monetary policy times in recent memory, certainly in a few generations. They had gone from 0% or 0.25% in March of 22 to the current level of 5.5%. A year ago as well, when we were in this room, it was widely expected that we would potentially have a recession by the second half of 2023, if you'll recall. And that not only did not play out, but to, I think, many folks' surprise, we had a very good second half of 2023. And so just looking at that from our firm's perspective, there are a few key themes that we look at right now. And one is, has the Fed done enough to tame inflation? particularly through the monetary policy. That very rapid increase in that overnight rate to try to bring inflation down, which, as you may recall, in June of 22 reached a peak of 9.1%, the highest level in more than 40 years. I think a majority of participants believe that the Fed has done their job in raising rates to this point. There aren't really any, or there are very few folks that anticipate any additional rate hikes at this point. Most folks are actually projecting rate cuts by the Fed this year. Of course, the timing and the amount of those cuts is uncertain. And as we look here in the next chart in just a moment at the projections of the Fed, they are notoriously wrong with their projections. But that said, there are trends that happen through rising and declining interest rate environments. The second theme is, will we have a recession or a soft landing? As I mentioned a moment ago, the thought was last year we would have a recession, and some were suggesting we would have a pretty deep recession, and that thankfully did not play out. At this point in time, many bankers, economists, and so forth believe that we may have avoided a recession through this monetary policy. It would be the third time in around 50 years, and the one common theme in those prior two instances where the Fed entered a tightening cycle or interest rate increasing cycle was a very strong labor market. And thankfully, we seem to still have that. In fact, we'll look at the jobs number here in just a moment, but the job market continues to be very positive, and I believe really is what's helping the consumer in spite of the high inflation that we saw throughout 2022 and even into 2023. And so then we look at this third theme, and it's somewhat of a waiting game, waiting for the Fed's policy really to play out throughout the economy to see how companies are able to work through these higher labor costs, to see if the labor markets themselves continue to be strong and at least positive through 2024. Looking at the Fed, how much do they move this year, whether that's up or down, increasing or decreasing? Looking at the housing market. The housing market has actually done well. We had lower sales last year. I believe it was the lowest number of housing sales in about 3 decades. But that was more of a result of lack of supply. Obviously, prices have impacted new home buyers in particular, but it was really lack of supply, and that was not only from new home builders, but also those of us who might have mortgages that are 3%, 3.5%. We don't want to sell our homes and then buy a higher priced home at a mortgage that could be potentially 6 to 7+%. And so those factors certainly impacted the housing market. That said, housing prices, as they've elevated, generally what we've seen in the market is we as consumers generally feel a lot better about our financial situation when we have equity in our homes. And that seems to be another positive factor that's helping us as consumers. Then there's the federal debt, right? We're at $31 trillion in federal debt. There's a lot of debate on the impact of that. But one thing that is certain is that is about 10 trillion of that debt is actually going to come due during 2024 and early 2025. That debt was previously issued at much lower interest rates, if you recall, back in the 2020 time frame, where rates were, as we mentioned earlier, close to zero. So that debt is going to be reset or reissued at much higher rates. That's going to have a significant impact on our federal budget, of course. And then we've got about $2 trillion in deficits that are going to fund. So we've got some competing issues out in the marketplace that will certainly factor into how our economy performed in 2024. So just quickly looking, this is the dot plot. I wanted to bring this up to show us this blue line is the median expectation of the Federal Reserve, and that overnight rate going from left to right from 2024 really out to longer term. And we can see this downward sloping line really just suggesting that the Fed members' expectations are that they will likely have to start to cut rates to spur a slowing economy if that were to take place. The other thing I'll highlight, though, all those little blue dots, and those are the individual expectations of the Fed members. And so these are the smartest folks in the room, if you will, and you can see, especially as we get out to 25 and 26, a lot of dispersion. So there's a lot of debate, even amongst the Fed members themselves, about whether the Fed would need to keep the rate where it is, potentially increase it more. We can see by those dots here, that 24 line, and then how quickly they might have to cut that rate if we do see an economic slowdown. And then I added the green line to show us that's what the market is expecting. So there are securities that are traded in the marketplace that give an indication of what the market expects. Right now, the Fed has suggested they may cut 3 times in 2024. When we talk about that, they're usually quarter point, 25 basis point cuts or increases. So that's the expectation from the Fed. The market, by that green line, suggests that the Fed may have to be a little more aggressive with rate cuts, which suggests that the market is expecting more of a slowdown than maybe what the Fed is. I'll go back to last year, and again, the expectation were Fed rate cuts in the second half of 23, which did not play out. So when we talk about that, and then when we get to your investment program, just know that as your investment advisor, we don't make investment decisions based on this chart or any type of predictions. It is a disciplined, dynamic strategy that is based on safety first, and as Ms. Souffrant mentioned, your cash flows and ensuring you have the appropriate liquidity you need for short and longer term expenditures, and then investing the balance of that out in your portfolio to provide protection in both rising and declining interest rate environments. GDP ended the year at 3.3%, much stronger than what was expected. It was expected around 1.5% for that fourth quarter. Again, the consumer, we remain very resilient. And so as we can see here, looking over at the far right-hand side of the chart, that 3.3%, the consumer, we contributed almost 2% to that number. And then it was just over 2% in the prior quarter. So we continue to spend. One of the things I will mention on that is we're spending, but our debt is really increasing as well to record levels. We have $1.1 trillion in credit card debt. And a couple of the other things I'm looking at, just when we look at the overall economy, is delinquency rates. And you may have seen an article recently where credit card delinquency rates increased from 4% a year ago to 6.4% this year. And so going from 4.4% to 6.4% may not sound like a big jump, but that's a 59% increase in delinquencies. And so there is some concern there with regard to consumer debt and our ability to keep spending, to keep the economy going. As you know, we make up more than 3/4 of the economy. And so hopefully the consumers could find some balance. Again, we mentioned increased wages over the last few years have certainly helped us with those higher costs that we've seen. And lastly, $17 trillion in household debt. So majority of that is mortgage debt, though. Credit card, autos, and then student loans make up a majority of that. GDP is forecasted this year to be around 1.6%. We're still early in the year. And so there's a lot that will play out to see where we land. But again, the good news is much stronger in that second half of 23 than was expected in the early part of the year. Inflation, of course, that's the hot topic, and it has been for a few years. We can see now that the good news is we've seen the rate of inflation come down quite dramatically from the middle of June, and in fact, December's rate was 3.9% for the core, which is factoring out food and energy, and then overall inflation down to 3.4%. And it's been hovering around that 3.4% now for the last few months of 2023. And many have suggested the Fed's got a target of 2%. They put that target in place really going back to 2012 timeframe when Bernanke was the chair of the Federal Reserve. If you remember, that was coming out of that economic crisis with the housing crisis and the credit issues. And so some are thinking that maybe 2% is a little too low. And so there's, again, some debate that where the Fed is with the monetary policy, maybe they have hit the sweet spot, so to speak, and that we're closer to a 3% target. But again, the good news is that inflation rate is down. On the other side of that, the challenge for the Fed has been housing costs. And we know that here in the city of West Palm Beach, as well as in Palm Beach County. And in fact, if you look at Palm Beach County, Broward and Dade, and then Hillsborough on the West Coast, those 4 counties alone have been some of the highest increases in home values and costs, whether you're buying a home or renting a home. And so that's been the biggest challenge, our shelter costs in helping to bring down inflation. Food costs have been a challenge as well. The good news is food costs have come down. You can see this food costs increased around 1.3% through the month of December. Going back 3, 4, 5 months prior to that, food costs were up 3, 4, 5% on an annualized basis. So the good news is they're not coming down in price, but they're just not increasing as much as they were. And we're starting to see home prices level off as well. Rent costs have leveled off also. So hopefully that will help keep inflation numbers coming down closer to the Fed's preferred target. Looking at jobs, just highlighting this, as we can see, the January jobs report was 353,000. It was almost double the expected 185,000. And interestingly enough, I put in this quote, it's deja vu. We were here a year ago. Interest rates had come down by about 100 basis points through the last quarter of 2022. We had a strong January jobs report, if you'll remember, and then we also had higher than what was expected inflation, and we saw interest rates bump right back up into February. And we'll see that in a chart here in a moment. The other positive is the unemployment rate is at 3.7%, so slightly higher than a year ago, although still below 4%, and hovering around these 40 to 50-year lows. So again, great news from the labor markets, and for it tends to still be more of a employee-favored labor market, although we are starting to see some shift where in some industries in particular, the employer is starting to gain some leverage there as well. So then just looking at those last couple of charts before we jump into your investment program. So this is fixed income yield. So we have the lighter blue line, which is the federal funds rate going back to the fall of 2022, just to give us an annual perspective. And then we have a 3-month T-bill, which is pretty much the equivalent of your overnight rate. That generally will track your federal funds rate. That governs overnight rates generally. And then the dark blue line is your 2-year treasury, and the gray is your 5-year treasury. A couple of highlights. You can see in this yellow shaded area, if you see where the rates peak, they're just left of the center. I mentioned the jobs report and inflation pushed rates right back up in the beginning of 23. And then if you recall, a year ago, just almost a year ago now, we had the banking crisis. We had the Silicon Valley Bank issue. We had the concern of the run on many banks. And you can see that dramatic decrease in rates as a result of that. And that lasted for 4 to 6 weeks or so. The Fed stepped in, the FDIC stepped in, the government stepped in, basically all doing their best to provide comfort to the market, to the consumers, that your assets in banks were safe. And the FDIC actually guaranteed those bank deposits. And so we could start to see through May, and again, continued economic growth helped push interest rates up through the third quarter. And then we actually saw, much like the year before, we saw rates actually come back down in the fourth quarter of 2023. Again, just reacting to the belief of an economic slowdown, exactly what we saw a year ago. That did not play out. The other thing is, even though we see a lot of volatility here, is if we took this chart back a couple of years, wherever we are on this chart, we're still 200 to 300 to 400 basis points higher than we were in 2020 and 21. And because we've had now 18 plus months of these higher interest rates relative to what we saw before, it's allowed your short-term liquidity funds to benefit greatly from that. And it's also allowed your longer-term portfolio to continue to be reinvested at these higher rates. And what that will do is, over time, protect those longer-term assets when rates go down. And so that's where that balance of your overall investment program comes into play. And then lastly, just showing us rates through the current cycle really peaked in mid-October. We've got October 18th illustrated in this green line, and then the blue line showing us where we were just over a week or so ago on the 4th. Rates are generally where they are today in that blue line. So we have seen rates come down by, you can see across the curve, but particularly in the 2 to 5 year area, by almost 100 basis points. And again, that is a result of the expectations of a slowdown here at some point in 2024. That's what we're looking at. One other thing I will mention, though, let me just go back one. If we look at that blue line above the gray line, that shows us that the 2-year Treasury has been paying more than the 5-year Treasury now for the better part of almost 18 months. And that is that inverted yield curve. And you may have read a lot about this over the last 12 plus months, that inverted yield curves have generally been a big predictor of a recession. But again, I go back to those few times that this had happened, that it didn't necessarily turn into a recession. So we'll see how this plays out, but the yield curve, as we show here, is still inverted. So that's still showing those shorter term investments paying a higher rate. We might, in our minds, think, okay, well, let's just keep everything short. And then when rates start to go down, we'll start to move those assets out. Generally, what happens with that, of course, is when those rates start to come down in the short term, the longer term rates have already started to move. Unfortunately, you can't time that. But again, that's not what we do. That's not what Ms. Souffrant or Mr. Ryback does. It's finding that balanced approach to the overall investment program. And so with that, I'll pause, and that concludes the economic update, and I'll turn it over to your portfolio in just a moment. Mayor?
Any questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Ward?
Thank you. That was very detailed. I'm curious just to go back to what you're seeing, because I feel like a lot of economic talk is, you know, this is unusual that we have this inflation, that we have high interest rates, that we're still seeing a great jobs market and a solid economy. That debt for the consumer is very interesting to me. So what are we doing to monitor that? Do you see that really swaying down the road, the positives that we're seeing?
So from my personal view, I do think that consumer debt is going to be a factor in economic growth over time. I don't know if that's in 3 months or 6 months or longer. Rate and prices have not come down. So we see lower inflation, which is good news, but prices are still higher than they were a few years ago. I think that's going to be a challenge to the consumer. Now, how that plays out into your overall investment program, if we as consumers do slow down our spending, and that does result in a slowing economy, then generally you would likely see rates come down. So that's how that would likely impact the investment portfolio itself. But because you have that diversified program, that's going to protect you. So if rates go down, we'll see this in a moment, your liquidity portfolio that has the higher rate right now will come down, but you'll be protected from those lower rates with your longer term portfolios. So I guess to sum that up, consumer debt and higher costs certainly are likely to impact the economy. If that does slow down the economy, you might expect rates to come down. The Fed's going to do that to bring down rates to help make money cheaper, if you will, easier to access, and help to spur the economy. Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions? Okay, proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so with that, we'll jump into the investment program. And so I'm starting this, we work very closely with Mr. Front, Mr. Ralbach, the investment committee team. We meet quarterly on a formal basis. It's myself and other members of the team, including your portfolio manager. We go through detail, and in between these quarterly meetings, we have a number of conversations generally with the team and just talking strategy, talking about investments, looking at your liquidity. But I just wanted to take a couple of moments and just highlight a few comments about how we partner with you all and with the team, and of course, working closely with you, as I mentioned. You have a Florida-based team. I'm based in Orlando. We have 6 individuals that are in Florida that are committed to serving the city, in addition to 50-plus professionals in our Denver headquarters that support this engagement as well. And in addition to the advisor role and the portfolio manager role that we meet with the committee each quarter, from public trust advisors, we provide a variety of other resources. We have compliance, we have operations, client services. So I just thought it was worth mentioning to highlight. It's not just coming here, presenting a report, and seeing you. It's a whole team of professionals. I get to be here in front of you, but there are a number of professionals that help support this engagement. And then the second half of the page, really just to highlight how we believe that in order to have a successful treasury and investment management program, there needs to be a very good amount of communication. And that allows us to help make better recommendations on the investment program, investment strategy, investment policy. And so through that communication, it helps us to build a stronger relationship with your team and with the city. And so just a couple of slides. There's a lot on here. Don't worry, I'm not going to read this word for word, but this is just some background for you all. Your investment program is governed by State Statute 218-415. And then you're also governed by 280, which is closer to the bottom, which governs your bank deposits. You have to be a qualified public depository to accept public funds here in the state of Florida. And the reason for that is when those banks take in public funds deposits, those are collateralized through a statewide pool, which provides a level of insurance. And then State Statute 16301 governs the local government investment pools that you and public entity utilize. Local government investment pools, just as a reminder, very much like a money market fund. It's a pooled investment approach they generally provide daily liquidity. And then I'll mention as we go into your investment program, your overall program is compliant with your investment policy statement, as well as with the state statutes that govern these. All of your assets are held, all of your public trust managed assets, by the way, are held in a third-party custodian. So we don't hold those assets in our name. They're held in a third-party custodian in the city's name. And when we make investment transactions recommendations, those bonds and cash that go in and out are coming in and out of that third-party custodian, so only authorized individuals have the ability to move funds in and out of that custody. We believe that's a huge internal control and benefit to your program. Speaking of your program, the structure is, of course, based on a number of factors. The source of funds, whether it's ad valorem or other revenue sources, and then the timing of the expenditures of those funds. Are they short-term? Is it operations? Is it payroll? Is it debt service? Those come into play. And then we look at the timing, your cash flows, as Ms. Souffrant mentioned, and then, of course, we make recommendations based on cash flows, liquidity needs, as well as your investment policy parameters. The investment strategy I mentioned is primarily focused on that safety of principal, providing liquidity, but also to seek a market rate of return as opposed to just keeping everything passive. We want to find a diversified investment program that helps to increase your potential earnings over time. And using liquidity and what we call core or longer term investments helps, we call that a multiple duration approach. That really helps minimize risk associated with any particular, thinking of it, keeping all of your eggs in one basket, you're subject to higher risks. This more diversified program helps to minimize those risks. So looking at each bucket of funds for your investment program, we'll start with your liquidity portfolio strategy, and this really makes up around half. So you truly have a balanced approach of your overall investment program, and about half of your non-bond proceeds assets are in liquidity funds. These liquidity funds are managed by your Chief Financial Officer and Treasury Manager. And again, we work closely with them, even though they're managed internally. They'll let Ms. Souffrant, Mr. Rawback are letting us know what your cash flow needs are, and if there's an opportunity to invest additional liquidity funds to capture yield and or protect against those declining rates, or if you need these funds for your short-term expenditures. The liquidity portfolios, as we can see here, if we go to that third column from the left, the book yield, book and market are going to be the same for these investments because they're a dollar in, dollar out. The nice thing is 5.44% was the weighted average through September 30th. And again, that high yield is tied very much to the Fed's overnight rate of 5.5%. So that's what we're seeing there. We can see their monthly and then year-to-date earnings on these assets. So it's been a nice thing to see the increased earnings compared, take these same balances and take 25 basis points versus 5.5. The interest income on these liquidity balances have really benefited from that now for the last 12 plus months. Hopefully the Fed won't cut too quickly and or too dramatically, because the longer that they keep rates elevated, the better it is for the earnings on this particular portfolio. You can see SBA Florida Prime and then Florida Class. Those are two of those local government investment pools or AAA rated funds. They provide daily liquidity, so you can make notice that morning and then have those funds same day. And then, of course, you keep a balance at TD Bank and those collateralized, being a qualified public depository. To balance out your liquidity is your core portfolio, and this is the portfolio that Public Trust manages on your behalf. If we go, a lot of information on here. If we just go to that top left, just a couple of highlights there. You can see the cost increase from $261 million to $321 million. The primary reason for that was during the fall, working with the team, Ms. Souffrant, Mr. Rawback identified around $60 million that wasn't going to be needed in the next 12 to 18 months. So we were able to ladder out some Treasury securities. So you can see that's the main reason for that increase in the balance from 2022 to 2023. Those were 1-year Treasuries, I believe, Mr. Rawback, that we did with those 2 years. That's right, that was a longer term one. Thank you. And so looking at this, not only that, like just a couple of highlights. The book yield, so the book yield on this portfolio is what measures the potential income generated from the portfolio. A year ago, in September of 2022, the book yield on the longer term portfolio was around 1.9%. So even though shorter term rates were moving up, those are reflected pretty much immediately. Your longer term portfolios are slower as you're reinvesting over time, but they're also slower to come down, and that's where that balance comes from. But we went from 1.59% a year ago to 3.08% this year. So certainly not as high as your liquidity, but during that time, we have been reinvesting in securities that are yielding anywhere from 3.5% earlier in the year to over 5% later in the year to capture that. And that's going to help with your income going forward. And so if we look at that from a dollar perspective, and I'm going to use, just to keep apples to apples, that $261 million balance, because we invested the additional funds later in the year. 1.59% would generate around 4.1 million in income. 3.08 is going to generate over 8 million. So you can see your liquidity funds benefiting from these higher rates and your longer term portfolio as well. You've got, yes.
Can I pause
Oh, I'm
just for
sorry.
1 second? No,
Yes.
no, you're fine. I just want to take a minute that this $60 million additional investment that John mentioned, that was a direct result of A, our communication, and B, our strategy. You know, when John Rauerbach came in and he looked at our cash flow and reviewed it with me, and we really capitalized as much as we could on the percentage of our assets that we could have in those liquidity LGIP vehicles where we are getting the very high interest rates right now. We are almost, you know, at the cap of what we can go into those current vehicles. But that was then the communication of, okay, what's our long game? So we're capitalizing on our short game, but we also need to make sure that we are getting investments in for the 2-year duration so that we can lock in those rates right now and help offset when the rates do start falling on our short-term investments. So we had taken strategic $30 million investment twice based on our cash flow to make sure that we make this portfolio more balanced going forward. So it's been a really interesting year for our conversations, and it'll pay off for the city.
Thank you for those comments. I'll pause in the future so I can get time to. That's a great comment. The communication does allow for a dynamic program. You have a policy that sets parameters, asset allocation, maturity limits, and then, but it's really the cash flows, changing market conditions. So it's important to be flexible and dynamic in your investment program. And as Ms. Souffrant mentioned, that's where that communication can come into play. It's not as if we have this program, this is how we're going to invest, and we're not changing. You want to be able to not time the market by any means, but be dynamic and allow the market to work in your favor whenever possible.
And I think it's also important that we have not increased our risk position, but by having that smart communication and getting those monies there, we're taking advantage of the interest rates, but our risk profile has not deteriorated in any way.
Correct. Safety remains number one with these investments, whether it's the treasury bills or the liquid portfolio that's collateralized and backed up. Correct.
Fantastic.
So just a couple of other comments. You're well diversified within your investment program and this portfolio in particular. You're around just shy of 74%, in fact, in U.S. Treasuries. And when we're looking out in the longer term investments in particular, the Treasuries have been the favored part. Working with Ms. Souffrant and Mr. Rauerbach, that's their preference as well, so that works out well. If there are opportunities to go into high-grade corporate notes that are permitted in municipal bonds, we'll make those recommendations. And just as a reminder, hopefully we mentioned this last year, but worth mentioning, anytime for any of our clients we're buying a security outside of a U.S. Treasury, it has to be approved by our independent credit team. So the portfolio manager doesn't just buy a security, even if it's approved by rating and maturity, it has to be approved by our credit team before our portfolio managers can buy that issuer. We put a lot of value in that from a safety perspective. But again, treasuries, agencies, a small percentage in municipal bonds, and then those corporate notes I mentioned. And being diversified within those sectors as well is very important. And so just looking at your overall program from an aggregate perspective, that's what our chart here is showing you. And as I mentioned, this bottom left-hand chart really shows from a maturity structure the balance that you have. Again, about half of your assets are in local government investment pool and bank deposits represented on the left-hand side, and then laddering out the balance of the overall investment program between 1 and 5 years, again, to protect. The book yield, as we can see at the top right, is 4.28%, so overall still benefiting greatly from the rates. Meanwhile, over 4% in income opportunity, and the overall duration is actually just over 1 year, right around 1 year. So from a volatility perspective, you're capturing those rates, and you don't have a lot of volatility being that you're at 1 year, and then just highlighting the asset balances between each of those. And then lastly, we wanted to show you a breakout of, I believe I mentioned, but let me not forget to mention you're highly rated. So very safe securities, A or better. As you know, the federal government's rated AA+ right now, so that's where you see a big balance. But this is a Standard & Poor's has the LGIPs at AAA, so you see that a large percentage in AAA rated. And then looking at your treasuries, agencies, and corporate notes being A and AA+. My last slide for you today is just showing you, we thought we'd present to you a breakout of your bond proceeds and restricted cash. So these are managed separately. Generally, the bond proceeds are governed by trust indenture documents. They also are subject to yield restrictions and arbitrage rebate rules, so looking at those types of investments. And then the other, of course, your restricted funds, and those would be funds, as Mr. Front mentioned, the operating is separate. Restricted funds are designated for some use at some point in the future. These funds are also managed by Mr. Front, Mr. Rauback, but of course, it plays into the overall investment program where we have those conversations during our investment committee meetings. And as we can see, a number of institutions where these, but they are essentially, much like your liquidity funds, they're in your local government investment pools as well as qualified public depository banks. And so we wanted to present that to you to see where your non-operating funds and how those are invested as well. That is a summary of my comments on your program. Oh, Mayor, pardon, I forgot my notes. Last year, you had asked a couple of questions on minority participation within our industry. So I wanted to follow up with you. So we have an approved broker-dealer list as a firm. They have to go through a vetting process, capital requirements, and a number of other factors to be approved. We currently have 5 minority-owned broker-dealers as part of our broker-dealer list, so they receive any inquiries that we have from buying or selling those securities, and we're glad to have those on there. A couple of the larger ones are Ramirez and Loop Capital, which may be names you're familiar with. From last year, we did conduct over $530 million in transactions with those broker-dealers. Of course, with any investment that we have a buy or a sell, they have to be competitively bid by state law, but it is nice that we have a number of these broker-dealers that are part of our group. They have the same opportunities to execute those transactions, and we're thankful that we have those as part of our team and that we're able to do that. The other comment is just from a public trust perspective and our hiring processes. In 2023, we hired 78% of our employees are considered protected class. So those would include female, minority, LGBTQ, and again, 78% of that, and some of those represented one or more of those groups that I just mentioned. So that's important to us as a firm as we continue to grow. As a firm, Public Trust, we now manage close to $80 billion in assets. We're in 18 states. We manage over $10 billion here in the state of Florida, where I'm focused, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the growth of our relationships, including the city, but diversity, of course, is a big important part of that growth as well. So wanted to make sure I followed up with that.
Thank you for that information. First of all, is this deck available to us?
Yes, sir.
I saw a number of people taking pictures of the slides, so if that could be submitted to all of us electronically. I appreciate this report, and I'm glad we're getting back to getting these annually, because that is not just for us, it's for the public who may be looking in, and I'm so impressed with the professionalism of your team, Public Trust, and certainly our internal team, and I think it should give the public tremendous confidence in how the city is handling its financial affairs. So thank you again for the detailed report and also the results and the information contained therein, because again, the city's in very good hands internally and externally, and that is very reassuring to me. Questions, commissioners, comments? Yeah, Ms. Souffrant, you had something?
There was one number that didn't make it out on the aggregate slide for the portfolio, and that is for the year, our interest earnings were $18.9 million. So that is a large number. That is a number when you think about financial sustainability and you think about those are dollars that we didn't, I mean, we budgeted for a portion of it, but those are, you know, excess revenue dollars that were not budgeted that will come through to the fund balance of the general fund, most of it. So that is huge. And when we are in the age that we are in right now, and we are looking to make that dollar last, having the extra funds coming in is wonderful.
Well, that's fantastic, and next time, let's make sure that gets on the slide, because I
You know,
think,
it's on the slide, it just didn't get called out, sir.
I didn't mention that, but again, this might be a great example of having a good communication and partnership, because I missed out on a very, very good point of the interest earnings, and Ms. Ufrant, thank you for pointing
made
that out,
other
that I
great
missed
points.
that.
but it only reinforces the remark I made earlier about how well our finances are being handled. So again, kudos to Public Trust, to our internal team, and it seems like the relationship is working out. Maybe this is for legal or procurement. How much longer do you have under your current contract? Does this have to go out for bid periodically?
Is it a 1 or 2 year renewal process that we're going through right now?
It is either a 1 or 2 year, I'm sorry, I have 3 in the hopper, and I can't separate them at this moment.
Okay, no,
but
that's
it is
fine,
1 or
okay.
2 year extension right now that we are working on.
Okay, all right, very good. Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you, Mayor. To your point, I think that this is something that the general public would like to know. Do we have a plan for releasing this information?
Well, I think we can work with Diane's team, communications, on putting together a very, obviously won't be as long as this deck, but a summary kind of press release. You know, good news doesn't necessarily get circulated. And then I can include it on my weekly newsletter as well, maybe give people a link to the report if they wanted more information. But we will do what we can internally to get the word out. That's a very good point.
And just, kudos to the team, because I think that, the point was well made that we are seeing increases in housing and in food costs. And if we could share with our residents that, we are being very fiscally responsible with their funds, I think that would be great news to share.
All while continuing to cut the millage rate. Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you again. We'll see you next year. Don't know if Ms. Johnson will be smiling as broadly then, but we'll take it. Thank you so much. Great
Mayor,
job,
Commissioners, thank you. Personally, as I mentioned, I've been fortunate to work with the city for a number of years. I'm very grateful for that partnership personally, and on behalf of Public Trust, we're thankful to serve you, work with Ms. Front, Mr. Rawback, and the team. Thank you.
One
And
last
Faye.
question.
Thank
Can you
Faye.
get me the list of the minority firms that you mentioned?
I can
And
follow up.
how often do you go out and try to supplement that list or replace, add?
The team does, I believe, at least annually, a
Okay.
formal review, but they're looking at the names throughout the year. So I will follow up with our entire broker-dealer list for you, and
Right.
you'll see the minority broker-dealer.
And not just for me, it's for the whole
Yeah,
commissioners and
absolutely.
myself,
Yep.
but please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That would be helpful.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Okay. We'll now turn to item 2, which is the 5-year MBE report update from Mr. Hayden, Ms. Hammerstein.
Thank you, Tom.
Oh, thought you come to talk to me. Okay, never mind. Okay.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, Commissioners, Ms. Johnson. My name is Frank Hayden. I am the Director of the Office of Small Minority and Women-Owned Business for the wonderful city of West Palm Beach. Before I started my presentation, I'd be remiss if I did not offer apologies from the chamber for the events of last Saturday. There's a lot I can say, but I think because this is a family channel, I'd rather not get into that. But I do deeply apologize. I thought it was very unprofessional, very uncalled for, and to take shots at this city, it was just unacceptable, especially as much as this city, you all, have done for small minority businesses in this city. it was just, I can't use the words that I've been using over the weekend to express my anger. So, on behalf of the chamber, I deeply apologize for that event. And apparently I can show them better than I can tell them. So we'll just keep doing what we've been doing, and we'll get to where we need to be. So,
Mr. Hayden, I appreciate those remarks. For clarification, are you speaking personally or on behalf of the chamber itself?
I'm speaking on behalf, personally and on behalf of the chamber, because I am a member.
Okay.
I was former chair of that organization. I was membership chair up until a short time ago when I took my leave from that because of what I see happening. So I'm speaking on behalf of the chamber. I will say further, I'm going to express to the members that I think they need to post on our website their disassociation with the comments that came out. And furthermore, I think they need to send a letter to you, Mr. Mayor, disavowing those actions and comments that were said as well.
Okay, well, I appreciate the comments. And those of you who don't know what he's talking about, we won't get into it here, but you can certainly speak to Mr. Hayden offline to get more details. But thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now, for what I came here to do. A few years ago, actually about 5 years ago, some of you were here with us on this journey and some were not. We approached you to get your approval to do a disparity study. And the purpose of that study was to determine that there were some disparities out there that existed for minority and women-owned businesses. And so for those studies, they have a 5-year life cycle that then require us to come back to you and share with you all the, in my opinion, great things that we've been doing over that 5-year period. And then to ask you and get your permission for us to go back out on this journey again to test the waters in the market and to make sure that we have not missed anyone out there and things that we might be able to do to improve that. What I just said in a mouthful, this kind of states it out, that the law that's put in place that allows us or requires us to take the action that we did 5 years ago to be able to create a disparity study to ensure that we were reaching out to all of our folks out there. So I did something there. Nope, wrong way. In the recommendations that came out of that disparity study, these are some of the areas that they talked about. For prime contract remedies, and they're there, I'm not going to read each one to you. Subcontractor remedies, setting subcontractor goals for construction and professional, require subcontractor goal attainment at bid opening, and the quality goods and service effort waiver, and to establish a WBE program. It was also for an information management recommendation to create a subcontractor tracking system to track M/WBE utilization and to prepare quarterly utilization reports and to report that to you. The WBE program implementation began in April of 2019 and carried through April of 20. And what that basically means is this was during the time that the study was done. This was the period of time when we put together the program. And I think for the most part, and as we get through this report, we'll show that with you all's leadership, we've been able to do what I consider an outstanding job in terms of addressing the needs of our minorities and our women-owned businesses. So this gives you the timeline of the disparity study, tells you the timeline of when we got the results, the program implementation, and the M/WB ordinance went into effect in April of 2019. These dates and times are important because, you know, that's when we were entering into the pandemic. And so because of that, we were extending a number of contracts because it was just financially beneficial for us to do that. But it also gave us an opportunity to put in place those things that we needed to be able to develop a program. Working very closely with our legal department, we authorized the language for the solicitation and contract. And basically what that means, prior to that, most of the language in our solicitations dealt with SBEs. And so we had to craft language, or our legal department crafted language to change that. Forms that were created to capture the solicitations, that began in spring of 2019. The firm that we used at that time to develop or help us to develop the disparity study was Mason and Tillman, which is out of Oakland, California. In this study, the beginning of 2021, I said it talked about we began to include M/WB goals in the solicitation. I talked to you about the pandemic and its impact on where we wanted to go. In the components of our small business program and minority business program, these are the four components that make that happen. And I couldn't do any of this without the outstanding team that I have. I think everybody knows the face of Sandy Hammerstein. There are some who say that she's the leader and does all the work in the group, and I take no offense with that whatsoever. Our newest member, though, is Miss Green. Could you stand up, please, Miss Green? She's been with us a little over a year now. She handles our certification for the city, and she's doing an outstanding job in that capacity.
Welcome to the team.
She's very shy, Mr. Mayor. So. And Alex Quinteros, I refer to him as my number man, but they tell me I need to stop saying that. So
Yeah, you're from Detroit, so
yes,
stay
I
away from
understand.
that.
I just can't help it. Some things are hard to break. But Alex crunches all the numbers. And I will tell you this. If I tell you we are spending X, Y, and Z, I can count on that. I don't have to do any double checking or anything. Those numbers are very accurate. One of the things that I talked to you about that we discovered in working with and talking to small and minority-owned businesses is that getting certified with us, which is vitally important, but that's just the beginning. What we found that a lot of these firms would get certified, they'd be fortunate enough to get a project, but then they discovered that you have to have money to do the work. And so that's why we reached out to local banks here and developed this consortium. And those of you who were here will remember that we came before you at the commission and asked you to bless this consortium. They included Valley National, Seacoast Bank, Flagler Bank. And that effort was to support small businesses, minority-owned business, and veteran-owned business as well. One of the things we're most proud of is this city stepped up to the table to help our firms who were going through the pandemic. And that was, we did a loan program of $150,000. And even though we gave out those loans, we eventually changed those to grants so that people didn't have to respond. There's only one entity that we provided those funds to that is still paying it back as a loan because when they got our money, they moved outside the city. And so we indicated to them that we expect you to pay every one of those pennies back. And they are doing so, by the way. We also then through the gracious generosity of you all on this board, you granted us $500,000 to provide funding once again to our minority and women-owned businesses here in the city. And this lists the category that those firms were able to ask us for. So we awarded 43 grants to individuals. And I'll tell you, when we initially opened the door in the first part of April, we got a response from 230 firms at an asking of $9.4 million. I didn't even bring that up to Ms. Johnson because I knew that was ridiculous. But as I said to the mayor, that shows that there's a need out here for firms to assist them. And we have, to this date, spent just shy of that 500-some thousand. It's about 460 something. And that's only because we've still got firms that are needing to provide us with the information.
And again, these are grants, not loans.
Yes, sir, you're right. These are grants, yes.
To your knowledge, Mr. Hayden, are there any other governmental agencies that have had such an extensive grant program to this population of small minority-owned businesses in the county?
No, sir. That, to my knowledge, there are none. I know the county does, but those are Department of Labor funds, as I think, that they are able to provide to the, but none entity that I'm aware of has stepped in their own pockets to provide money. And if
This
I might,
is the city's, out of the city's general fund.
yeah, general fund, yes, sir. And I should say, when you take into account this 500,000, when you take into account the 150,000, and then I think it was around 350,000 back during pandemic, that's $1 million that you all as a commission and a city have invested in the businesses in this city.
That is so important. Do you have any idea of this $500,000 that just went out last year? How much went to minority-owned businesses?
My great staff is showing me little notes on the slide. 34 of those grants went to
34 of the 43.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you so much. It's exciting to see the results of that program. I know we were all extremely supportive of it. I'm just curious if you have any more details on the breakdown of those awardees.
I don't, but I'm sure my staff does.
We can provide that to you.
Speaking to the mic.
We can provide that to you, or I can read the breakout right now if you
Do you
need it.
mind just giving us a
both?
high level? Yeah,
Sure.
thank you.
For African-American firms, there were 34 grants for $411,000. For Hispanic-owned firms, there were 2 businesses that got grants for $20,000. And for female, Caucasian females, they got 3 grants at $36,000 approximately, and there was 1 Caucasian male small business that received $16,000, and then there were 3 that were not identified, but they were totaling $15,000.
And do we have any information about the location throughout the city that we're getting this information out? I know I see you all doing a lot of outreach, but I was actually just at a meeting last week from some small businesses along South Dixie saying, hey, how do we get help? And I just want to make sure that this information is getting out to everybody.
The we have the addresses, we could pinpoint them on the map if you need us to do that, but it was pretty much throughout the whole city.
I would appreciate that information if that's available.
Yeah, that's fine. Clearly the word got out, and I don't know, and they can go into more detail as to how we circulate. I know we had a very robust campaign, but I forget how many people showed up, but the applications were Repeat that number again, Mr. Hayden. How many people,
230,
businesses,
230 applied,
for, and asking for what, 9 million or something like that?
9.4.
And the interesting part, Mr. Mayor, and excuse me for interrupting you, we got apps from Delray, from Boynton Beach, from Lake Worth. One gentleman requested that Ms. Johnson waive the requirements so that he could take our money there. So it came from all over. And Commissioner Lambert, we will go, as you said, we'll go anywhere to talk to anyone. And so if there's some organizations out there we need to reach out to go out and share with them the opportunities that exist here, we're more than happy to make that happen.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
President
excuse me.
Warren and then Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, excuse me.
Hi. Thank you very much, Mr. Hayden and Ms. Hammerstein. I'd just like to reiterate the applause for the efforts that we've been making and the strides that we've been able and successful in attaining. We do recognize, and I know that this is a response to the disparity in capital and access to capital that many minority businesses face. So in order for us to see that we were supporting those businesses, we did something that I believe is exemplary to other municipalities. I appreciate the accountability measure that you have in place where you were able to see the business that moved out of the area and that you required them to pay those funds back. I think that was spot on. That was absolutely the right thing to do. And whatever steps you had in place to ensure that we did that, it worked. Earlier you spoke about the subcontractor tracking. And I want to know if you're aware of the percentage or the numbers of the minority and women-owned businesses that are coming from our database, or are they reaching those numbers because they have other relationships that they're bringing to work on the projects here in our city? Because I would really love to see that we have local minority and women-owned participation, local businesses that are able to benefit from the efforts that we're putting forward.
And I will speak to that later on in the presentation.
Okay.
We will share with you some information that we send to you on a regular basis. But I know you get a lot of information on a regular basis, but we do track it. We do keep up with it. I will attest to the fact that in our area of the minority and women-owned business, it's nowhere near where I would like it to be. But what you will see in the slides we will provide to you, a number of our small businesses are also certified as MWBE businesses as well. So even though the dollar values might not show that the bulk of the money or a large segment of the money is going toward minority and women, when you look at the fact that they're certified as an SBE as well, then that money kind of evens itself out in terms of that. But once we get to those slides, then I think you'll see that we do track it and we do keep up with it as best that we can.
Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, and thank you. This is a great presentation, and I appreciate your questions. To Commissioner Lambert's point, and I don't know if you were in the Latin Quarter or if you were talking with Hispanic, but I do know a comment in my district was sometimes that, some of my Hispanic residents feel like the translations could be better, or that we potentially utilize new tech and have a translator, because, you know, I don't know if you speak Spanish fluently, no. So while you're presenting, having a translator and having those communications in there, like some other cities do, to be able to kind of have the same meeting so that you guys don't have two meetings, that everyone's included, and that may be a way, because you guys did do a great job getting the word out, and it clearly shows, but maybe there's always people that feel left out, and maybe that's one segment that we could be doing across the board at our community meetings.
Yes, ma'am, and we have been approached about some of the literature that we put out, putting it out in Spanish and Creole as well. But I will say I do not speak the language, but Sandy Hammerstein does, Alex in the back does, and so we'll do whatever we have to because we want the family to grow and not be limited in terms of where we are. So, but that's a good suggestion, and we'll make that happen.
And we had some Creole radio time for the grants as well. So we have been able to reach those two communities, the Hispanic and the Haitian American community as well.
And we work very closely with the Hispanic Chamber here as well, providing information to them, which they send out to their members as well. But once again, we'll do whatever we can to make sure that we're growing the pot and not limiting.
And by the way, commissioners, if you have organizations, individuals that you want to make sure are getting this information, please bring that to administration's attention so we can make sure that we're adding them to our distribution list for information. So please share that with us as you are out and about in your districts. I think, Commissioner Fox, did you have your hand up? Yep. Oh, okay. All right. Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to that point, I don't know if this list has been updated lately, but I remember when Chris Rugg was our Economic Development Director that he did some outreach specifically to some business associations. I know specifically along the South Dixie corridor, but throughout the rest of the city as well. And so I don't know if you have that list or not, but that would be a great group, different groups to reach out to.
We will take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I know you still have some more.
Yes, sir.
Continue with your presentation.
So,
Mr. Payton.
as I spoke earlier about that, we're trying to help our businesses grow and become better. And so as a result of that, we've created some programs. We did a bonding and technical assistance program because what we found also is a number of construction firms, primarily small and minority-owned firms, did not have the ability to get bonded. And on all of our projects, we require them to be able to do that. So we've run, we're in our second, we just completed our second program in that area. And off the top of my head, I don't remember how many folks were in total attendance, but we do know that a certain number of those individuals at the end of that program were able to get bonded. The person that we're utilizing for this training also provides bonding, so they can place them in the right areas to be able to get that. We're doing this year an entrepreneurship training series. That's going to be kicking off this month.
February 27th.
Yes. Once again, everything that we can do to help our businesses get to the point that they can be standalone. We did a marketing program because most businesses don't have a full-time marketer on their staff, and so we want to train them, how do you sell your business out in the public? Because a lot of businesses that we found out, if you want somebody to hang a door, they can do that, and they're very good at it. But they're not good at marketing their abilities to hang doors so they can get more work and more business to keep them up and running. We're doing one that's talking about how to respond to RFPs, because once again, what we found out was a lot of firms don't know how to respond to those, the process that governmental entities go through to be able to get work. And Madam President, we're into that area where I talked about, and I share with you, you all get these reports from us on a quarterly basis. Is that right, Alex? So it provides you with this documentation. But this pie talks about our M/MWBE certification, and it tells you the percentage and the numbers for each ethnicity group. And the pie shows how much is relative to each. And I think it's interesting, Commissioner Lambert and Commissioner, you notice here the largest group that have certified are the Hispanics groups. This once again breaks down for you the dollars and how we are generating them. And as I said to you in the very beginning, when we get to, for our SBE numbers, they're in the millions. I mean, serious millions. But in our MBE, you see it's less than $2 million. But that comes back to at least half of these companies are also certified as an SBE. And on a lot of our contracts, we're using SBE percentages on it as opposed to MWBE percentages on it. And the rationale behind that is, for our SBEs, it's 18%. And you might remember, we're at 15%, but I came to you a couple of years ago and asked you to push it up to 18. And I'll tell you, I've been threatening to come back again because we're hovering around 20% each quarter on our participation. But because a number of these firms are certified in both categories, and we're just not able to get as much on our contract, because for the minority piece, it's only 7.9% or 9.7?
9.9.
Yeah, percent. That's all we can ask for and legally abide them to. So it keeps our numbers low in terms of it.
Did you want to run the video?
Yes. So the other thing that we've done is through these programs we've been running and the success that we've obtained, we've gotten some video of individuals for them to
Over
build
the
their
past
own
year, business has been steadily picking up at Andre Morgan's Bright and Clear Soft and Pressure Washing. After 5 years running his own business and 15 working for other people, Andre knows how to get the job done. But some of the technicalities of being an owner were still a mystery to him, like how to get bonded.
I didn't know how to get bonded.
That's why he signed up for the Bond Readiness and Technical Assistance Program, sponsored by the city in partnership with Innovative Bonding Services. It's here that Andre and dozens of others learn the technicalities of running their own businesses, like how to become bonded, how to bid for jobs, and handle their banking. So now, in addition to being an expert at this, Andre also knows a lot more about being the boss, and his business has continued to grow.
The city has opened up opportunities as far as getting the proper directions and connecting with the right contractors and people.
There are a number of courses, seminars, and events designed to help small minority and women-owned businesses every year.
So our job is to ensure that companies like this have an opportunity, and whatever roadblocks that would have existed prior to that we eliminate them so they can be successful.
To find out more, call 561-822-2104. This is Cheryl Kahn reporting for WPB-TV.
So that we thought it was important for you to hear from those businesses that we have been able to assist and help. So in this, this is the city code that allows us to do what it is that we need to do. So let me give you a little history. So on April, we will present to you a 5-year plan. We will document from the beginning to where we are today the success that we've had. It'll be incorporated in a great deal of what we're asking for now, or what I'm showing you now. And then we're going to ask you that this program, as I said, goes for 5 years, and then you need some additional time to do what we need to do. So we're going to be asking you to approve 2 additional years to keep this program running. During that time, we'll do a disparity study. And what we'll be looking at, the county is going to go out for an RFP. We piggybacked off the county's RFP 5 years ago. Solid Waste Authority has already put a solicitation out and is now reviewing the responders to that. And so it would be my intent to come back to you and ask you to allow us to piggyback again, and that way we don't have to go through the whole process of the RFPs and the solicitation and so forth. And so that will be in April, when we'll come back and to ask for that opportunity to be able to do what it is that we do so well. So with that, I'll entertain any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
and
you.
Commissioners, I'm sorry.
Before we go any further, commissioners and those who might be listening, I do want to commend Mr. Hayden and his team. As you can see, I believe we have the best leader of our of this department in the county, maybe even in the state or the nation. Mr. Hayden has how many years of procurement experience? How many years were you with South Florida Water Management District?
I was with them for 10. I've been with you, Mr. Mayor, for now going on 11. A lot of people ask me, when am I going to retire? But I enjoy doing this too much. I truly do.
You're very good at what you do, but what I also enjoy, commissioners, he hears he sees the gaps in the services, and he comes up with programs to address those gaps. Just the gentleman who we heard from obviously knew his business, but bonding capability, marketing capability, et cetera. So rather than Mr. Hayden and his team just sitting back and saying, well, wish you could do better, he identifies subject matter experts that can start providing this kind of training so that, as he says, we can expand the family. So we have one of the best, if not the best, here at the city. And Mr. Hayden, I want to say that publicly and thank you for all the work that you're doing, because this is a good and noble effort, well, what the city is doing, and I would hold our performance in this arena up against any other governmental agency in the county or even in this state. We the city are doing the work, due in no small part to Mr. Hayden's leadership. President Warren.
Mr. Hayden, when I've asked you when you're retiring, it's not because I want you to retire.
Oh, you the one asking him?
It's because I want to
Girl,
know.
hush.
It's because I want to know how much time we have, because I know that there's so many wonderful things that that you've done, and your team, you and your team are present. You're in the community. You're everywhere. The brand of the city and our MWBE, small and minority and women-owned businesses, that's everywhere. I see it. And I know that people ask questions. Not only are you accessible, but you're also responsive. And I've also seen the growth in our minority and women and small business-owned SBEs, and that database continues to increase. And I know that the mayor and Madam Administrator continue to raise the bar because you keep hitting all of the numbers. But it's justifiably so. They know that you can do it. You and your team have consistently delivered. And so I want to make sure that everyone knows that I agree with the mayor, and that we do have a great team that is led by all of your experience in and outside of the state of Florida that we've been able to benefit from as a community. And I do review those emails that you send. You should know that I review those emails regularly in reference to the participation. But my question specifically, though, is in the subcontractor tracking, are we looking at, and is there a way to go back and see whether or not there are local business opportunities that are created, and the accountability for that? And if there isn't anything that we're looking at, can we begin to look at that? Because we as a city, with all of the things that we're doing, I'd love to see that we're growing the profit margins for more businesses that are housed here in West Palm Beach that are actually in that database that we're talking about.
And Madam President, that is our contention as well. We, with our staff, we work very hard to identify and get as many firms certified who are in our city. Currently, we have reciprocal agreements with the county and the school board, but I always insist that even though they certified with the county, I want them to get certified with me as well. And so we have a good number of firms who are physically housed in our city. And I think it's because of the programs that we offer and the opportunities that we provide for them. And so, yes, we will look at those numbers. I'm looking back there at Alex, and provide this commission with information about the local firms here who are certified with us.
And perhaps you could show trend numbers from year to year as to whether those numbers are increasing over time.
Yes, sir. And then just saying, when you bring that up, what, 10 years ago, we were about at 60 registered SBEs,
Yeah.
and now we're up to 600. So, yeah, it is growth. And once again, I think it points back to the fact that we've got this sign out there saying, come on, you know, we're going to do everything we can to help you. And people want to take advantage of that.
Okay. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful to your team. I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. I think hearing how many businesses from outside of the city have been applying for grants is a testament both to the fact that the outreach you're doing is obviously getting out there, and also that the other cities surrounding us are not doing anything similar. So those businesses are also coming to us for support. I wanted to mention I was at the event on Saturday night. I went to support businesses that I nominated for awards that I met from being here at the city, from the work that they're doing with us, and they are really grateful to us. And so I was very happy to see also the testimonial that you provided today with, you know, that one business. I'm sure that there are so many others. I'm wondering if there's the businesses that we were giving grants to, you know, have we asked them for other testimonials? I think it's a lot easier for people when they hear bad news. People want to hear, you know, that kind of thing. It's easier to believe, but, you know, the proof is in what we've actually, you know, achieved here, what we've helped these businesses to be successful. And I think it would be just really important and amazing for the community to know that the success that these small businesses are having based on the way we were able to invest in them.
With Diane's help, we have taken the list of grantees and we've asked them if they would do a video like this one, stating how they have been successful with either working on a contract with the city or having gotten a grant. And so far we've gotten, I think it's 3 or 4 videos, but some of them don't take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, and it's amazing when we go to them and ask them the question. They're really shy. They'd rather stay in the background. But we've put together some good tapes. We just highlighted this one, and but that's what we're doing. Because you're right, we need other people to tell our story as opposed to us telling it ourselves.
And maybe as we increase the number of those videos, and by the way, kudos to Diane and the communications team. They work very well with other departments in the sandbox, and I've made it very clear to her team and even the broader administration, I want us, West Palm Beach, to tell our own story and to have, whether it's videos or newsletters or whatever, to tell our own story. We do have a lot of good news that does not get picked up, and so it's important to have this information. But as we get more of these, Diane, I'll ask you, perhaps we can just take the initiative and send those videos to the commissioners so they can have them in their own data bank, and they can feel free to share them with whoever. But you can see how professional and how well done they are. That's done internally. So she's got a team, just like Mr. Hayden. She's got a very professional team that does produce very high quality work and helps the city tell its own story. And so we are capturing our own narrative. So as these get rolled out, Diane, if you could just proactively share that with the commissioners and their aides so they have it in their own toolbox. I feel your head nodding. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you so much. I was actually nodding too during your presentation, almost in disbelief. I can't believe it's been 5 years already. And, a lot has happened in that time. And I want to continue the kudos that's been going on because it is tremendous that we've gone from 60 to 600 registered SBEs. And I have two questions. One is just going back to, I want to make sure on the previous slides are you looking for some feedback from us on next steps, or are you moving forward on those next steps of either its funding or the study that's going to happen? And then my second question is, you've done a great job of listening, as the mayor said, and providing education on the areas that our small businesses and minority-owned businesses are telling us that they need. I'm curious what's on the horizon.
Well, let me first say, when we provide you with the overview of the 5 years we've been here, and so when we come back to you to talk to you about that, that's when we like your input in terms of what you've seen that we've done over the 5 years, what you think we can do better, or what we should be adding to the pot. And then as we eventually get a consultant on board, I would like for that consultant to come and speak with you all maybe individually to get your thoughts and feelings so we can incorporate that into what we do the next 5 years down the road. And I forgot the other part that you said, Commissioner, I'm sorry.
What's on the horizon?
Oh, yes. I don't know. The interesting thing about our success, and I say our success, is people come to us now to pitch ideas of what they can do. And so most of the time now, we don't have to do anything but just sit and wait for someone to bring us some concept. That's how the branding thing came about. That's how the bonding thing came about. They pitched the story to us, and we said, okay, that sounds good. And we'll go ahead and move ahead to make that happen. And the other interesting thing is that we fund those opportunities, which means we're funding a small business to get out on the world to share with everyone else about what they do. This one lady who does the marketing for us, we're about our 3rd year with her now.
Yes.
She wrote a book about what all to do. So she's having a book signing,
launching.
Yeah, at the end of her thing. And what we did, for everybody who went through the program, we purchased those books so she can give them out free to those people. Now, the rest of them, the people are going to have to buy them, but the ones who went through the program. So once again, that motivates people to want to participate in our program. And it helps those small business get to
Please
where
tell
they
me
need
she's
to be.
located in the city.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And just gave birth to a child that is located in the city as well. So.
Follow up from Commissioner Lambert.
To that point, I'm just curious if, no, I think that you addressed it, so
Oh,
no,
okay.
I'm good.
All right.
By the way, I think that would be a good person to get on video. She's in branding. I'm sure she's not shy. So maybe we could reach out to her and see if she would be willing
Her
to tell
book
her
launching,
story.
her book launching is February 15th here at the auditorium. And we're going to be taping her and
Okay.
making sure that she
Very good.
does a little video for us.
Very good, very good. So in other words, the short answer to Commissioner Lambert, you'll come back to us in April.
Yes.
And present the 5-year overview. And then at that time, you'll be looking for us to authorize funding to hire a consultant.
Right.
And you'll have a number in mind at that time? Because,
Well,
Ms. Johnson.
5 years ago, and I know she's been watching me, so 5 years ago, we spent $160,000 to do the program. I'm assuming because of the finance people here before, the inflation and everything, I'm thinking it's probably going to be around $200,000.
I'm sure Ms. Johnson will talk to you offline
Well,
about.
I'm sure she will, Mr. Mayor. And I was hoping I didn't get that door open, but, you know.
That's why I wanted her to show her smile at the beginning of the meeting, because I know as we got deeper in the meeting, that smile would like slowly deteriorate.
I understand.
Okay,
I understand.
so we will move right along. Yes,
That's it. And I would
that's
just-
in April. So
Yes,
we gotta-
but you all will get the report in March? Is that our plan? We'll provide that to the commissioners and you, Mr. Mayor, and Ms. Johnson. We'll provide it to you two first to make sure, you know, we've dotted all the i's, crossed all the t's. Once we get your approval, then we'll give it to the commissioners. So you'll have it for about a month to review and whatever comments, and then when we come to you in April, that's when we'd like to have some serious conversation. And so, Mr. Mayor, Madam President, and Commissioners, I want to tell you that it has been an extreme pleasure to do this. I have a very small team compared to other people, but I will match them against anybody in this city. So, if that's it.
Any other questions? The only other suggestion I'll have, and I will probably speak to communications, but I want them to work with you. This is Black History Month, and I think that we need to, back to telling our own story, use some of the information you provided and put together, I don't know if it's a press release, Diane, or just a we need to highlight all of the support we've done for Black businesses in this city.
Yes, sir.
With data, right? 34 to 43 grants were given for X number of dollars, and all the training that we're doing, all the how the certification numbers. So I want you to work with communications on putting together maybe a one-pager with factoids.
Yes, sir.
And as part of our celebration of Black history, this is what the city has been doing to support Black businesses in our city.
More than happy.
And I'd like to get that out, obviously, before the end of
before
the end of Black History Month.
is over. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think we can do that. I think we've got some good data.
Absolutely.
That we can make that happen.
All right, President Warren.
And this may be unrelated, but I think it would be a great idea to also capture the Jumpstart Academy and all of the people that participated in that and how that's been beneficial to the small businesses in the area.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, we will incorporate that, and we work very closely with the Jumpstart Academy. I mean, and I'm sorry, I'm going to stop, but we have a stepping process. The people who go through the Jumpstart Academy, and those are individuals who have an idea of what they want to do, but no idea about how to make that happen. So once they get that choice, then they can move on to another program that takes them to a different level, and then so forth and so on. Because I tell folks when I'm out speaking that I want to treat these businesses just like I treat my children. That once you turn 18, you graduate from high school or college, I expect you to get out and be on your own. And so that's what I want these small businesses. Don't get comfortable at home. I want you to grow to the point you no longer need me, that you can step out there on your own and be successful on your own. But until you get there, we're going to be there to give you all the support and help you can. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next item, Public Utilities Water Resiliency Update.
All right, no problem, no problem.
See what you're doing back there.
All right, we'll take a 2-minute comfort break. I think we lost a couple of commissioners. So give us a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Let's resume. And we're going to talk about water resiliency update.
So, good morning, Mayor James. Thank you for having me here this morning. My name is Victor Carosi. I am the Director of Public Utilities for the city. This morning I am joined with Daryl Graziani, and I also have Jim Anderson. He's a geologist with JLA Geosciences. We also have Gary Gruber of Mock Ruse is a big part of this presentation. But again, I want to say first off, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. And what I really want to do is talk about our water. I have the title here, Water Supply Resiliency Update. What it is, it's really it's a look ahead to our water supply future. In a hopefully brief presentation, I'll provide you an overview of our water supply, its capacity, our treatment, an update on our past water quality issues, and a look ahead to our supply and treatment future. So first, I want to talk a little bit about what it is. The city owns and operates a public water system. We control the water from source to tap, treating primarily surface water, and delivering quality drinking water to about 125,000 people across the city and our customers in the town of Palm Beach as well as South Palm Beach. Overall, right now we have and treat and deliver about 30 million gallons of water a day to all our customers. We have the capacity right now to deliver 47.3 million gallons. So we have good capacity to provide water needs today and for our city and towns into the future. As you can see from this map, our water distribution serves quite a large area. We're delivering drinking water across a large area. Maintaining the water supply as safe and abundant, meeting all health department requirements is no easy task. Just want to talk to our licensed professionals that we have that do just that every day. Our team always looks ahead, protects the water supply, and we make sure that the water supply is always available. Water must always be available to support our growing, our vibrant community. It just goes without saying, and I'm happy to say that we have a good and solid supply at this point. We do have long-term objectives, never want to sit back. So, as a large regional water supplier, we do have a responsibility to the communities to provide and maintain a resilient and robust water supply. We consider it an adaptive management approach to water supply, with the goals of improving the reliability of our supply and the management of our supply resources. And that would be optimizing our source water for quantity and quality to maximize our treatment performance. Leverage localized drought-tolerant supplies for pre-drought conditions and post-drought recovery. We also want to make sure we have a diversity in our supply with alternative water sources. This approach is considered while minimizing impacts to our ecosystem and our natural environment, as well as managing costs and providing affordability. It's very important that we know into the future we still must provide water that's safe to drink, that's quality, but it has to be affordable. And that's a challenging balancing act that we do with everything we're going forward. Keeping water as reasonable priced and available for everybody. A little bit more on our water source. First, the city's raw water source. Now, I talk in our community about raw water and finished water. What we mean by raw water is that goes into our treatment plant from our surface system versus finished water, that water which we've already treated and is safe for people to drink. Our city's raw water sources are primarily a surface water. Surface water system is what we have here currently. And we're blessed here in Palm Beach County with an abundance of rainfall, averaging about 60 inches on an average annual basis. So our source water, as I said earlier, it's a surface supply. The city has 2 local freshwater supply sources, which is our primary source during the wet season. We have the city's 23-mile Grassy Waters Preserve. Many of you know that area. It's a key component of the it's a key component of the Greater Everglades watershed, and is also part of the headwaters to the northwest fork of the Loxahatchee River. So Grassy Waters is kind of an interesting position where it balances the ecosystem of the Everglades and the history there, as well as also providing a source of water to others going up north with the Loxahatchee River. The other thing that we also have is about a 1.25 square mile lake system, which is kind of, people know that's a signature to our city. We have coming down Okeechobee Boulevard, you see the beautiful water on either side of you. That's part of our drinking water supply as well. And all that water actually makes its way down these various canals, starting all the way out at Lake Okeechobee sometimes, going through what we call our L8 control, coming down our M Canal, and making its way all the way to our city's water treatment plant. And as you see here, another key component as we talk about our grassy waters coming down where we have our M Canal, which is a main conveyance. It's a surface water canal that takes those surface waters from grassy waters and brings everything down into Lake Mangonia and Clear Lake. Our water treatment plant is there at the intersection of Banyan down towards the edge of Clear Lake. So at the treatment plant, it's where we call it's a bit of magic that our team puts together. Each day, monitoring the network of canals, control points, to get the best water quality available to us as it flows all the way down. Once at Clear Lake, we filter the water and treat it through several processes. We remove the sediments that might be in the water, bacteria, and other potential pathogens. To continue to provide safe drinking water, following our mission to be adaptive, a few years ago in 2019, the city put into service an UV, it's also known as an ultraviolet disinfection system. It's a state-of-the-art system, and it's part of a multi-barrier approach that we have to control possible harmful bacteria that might be in our water. This disinfection process is in addition to the required chemicals that we put into the water, which is basically a chlorine-based solution to finish the disinfection before that water is pumped out to our customers. Because we do rely on a surface water, mainly rainwater is where our water comes from, that supply can be subject to the whims of Mother Nature. If it doesn't rain, our supply can be challenged. Some of you may remember past drought years of the late 2000s, such as 2007 and 2011. These are some pictures actually of Grassy Waters Preserve down at that time. The city experienced several years of limited rainfall back in the 2000s and then again in 2011. South Florida experienced the worst drought conditions ever in that year. It was in 88 years from record keeping, and they considered that drought to be over a 1 in 100 year drought, meaning that there's a recurrence of less than every, simply saying every 100 years or so. So during that time, 2011, a drought, our supply was severely limited and restricted. The South Florida Water Management District restricted, then halted all deliveries of regional water to the city. So I talked about that regional water, previous slide, when we started all the way out at Lake Okeechobee and the various canals. They actually said, that's it, there's no more water to be delivered to the city. So as a result, we were actually forced to rely only on our local freshwater supply, which was Grassy Waters, and actually going back to those two lakes. Luckily, the city's drought response did prove effective, but it did highlight concerns regarding the sustainable quantity of water available from the system during droughts. So in response, in 2011, the city developed its long-term water supply plan to specifically address sustainable water quality concerns. After a 1.5 negotiations with the district, the South Florida Water Management District, the city was issued what we had called our current consumptive water use permit. And that came to us in February of 2013. That permit is valid through 2033. And again, what that permit is, it controls the amount of water that we draw, where it goes, and what sources we have available. The idea behind this permit is also made some great advances to the future for maximizing sustainable capacity of the existing facilities and our freshwater sources. We also were able to expand renewable groundwater supply from what we call the surficial aquifer. This is a shallower aquifer that's present in a good part of Florida and takes advantage of the relatively sandier soils and provides an opportunity to draw water from a relatively shallow surface, 60 to a couple hundred feet deep. But we also want to develop new and alternative water supply capacities. And again, all this is done through what we call our primary and secondary drought management plans that we have. So I just want to briefly highlight some of the work that the city has done in the past, all towards resolving and making our water system more resilient. So in response to those past drought events, the city's team of consultants and our talent within the city adapted a few interesting improvements to our canal system. Back in 2012 and 2013, the city upgraded its 2 major supply control structures along the M Canal. That's what we're seeing here, some of these facilities. What these are different controlled areas where we have gates that we can tell to raise or lower gates, controlling water movement. We also have some that are pumped, where we can pump water from one area to another area. And another interesting system that they did is what we call the Clear Lake Divide and pump structure. Clear Lake, again, we talked about earlier where it is. And what this also did is it changed the opportunity for us to draw water from that Clear Lake from a different part of a lake that draws more water and opens up many more, actually, we're to 2 billion gallons more of water available to us in the event of a drought. Additional things that we did, we've talked about our shallow aquifer. There's the eastern well field. So we, in 2016, the city completed installation of 10 additional groundwater wells. We additionally repurposed existing groundwater wells, and we acquired a 1,400-acre wetland in a Poet Preserve, again, for additional storage and well field recharge. So now we have available 20 permitted wells to help augment our freshwater supply with shallow groundwater sources. But we continue to harden and improve our water supply and control actions to respond to ever-changing conditions and regulations. We do have challenges in our system, but our adaptive planning strategy provides a way for us to respond. This was evident in the May 2021 cyanotoxin event. In May of 2021, our proactive water sampling program noted elevated levels of the cyanotoxin in our finished water. These levels were above the health advisory level at that time. It triggered a brief do not drink public health advisory. But from our resiliency and adaptation, the city implemented its plans, sought and received permission to use our alternative supply strategies, and was able to rebound from this incident quickly. Under the leadership of Mayor James, an expert panel of water quality professionals was convened to review the incident and guide the city on effective actions to treat our water and develop strategies for addressing toxins in the supply into the future. Ultimately, this expert panel developed several near and long-term recommendations that have since been implemented and are in action to this day, including monitoring the water from its source. At times, we go all the way back to Lake Okeechobee. We have several control points along the M Canal within our treatment processes and our finished water. New processes within our water treatment plant control cyanotoxins in the water. Improved communication to all our water customers, such as our Safe Water Dashboard that's on our website to this day. And we have maintained approvals to modify our water use operating permit protocols, enable the use of groundwater from our well fields outside of drought events. Following the above actions, I'm happy to report that since the implementation of our testing and operating protocols following the event, the city has managed the cyanotoxins in our raw water below health advisory levels. We've also revised our water treatment processes and have been effective at removing cyanotoxins from the drinking water. Thanks to the protocols of the expert panel, our drinking water is safe. Now, the final recommendation of the expert panel is to focus on a new supplemental Floridan aquifer system allocation. So following their recommendation, the city is moving ahead for our future. But you might want to ask, what exactly is the Floridan aquifer? Basically, it's a vast underground source of water. It covers over 100,000 square miles across the southeastern part of the country. It's over 1,000 feet deep in our area, so accessing it is not easy. But it does provide a reliable, abundant, and steady water source. Its quality is consistent and not subject to the variability like a surface water system is, including changes in rainfall, contamination potential from pollutants, toxins, algae, and other surface water impacts. A great benefit to the city of the Floridan aquifer will be its resilience from drought and the consistency of its quality. The challenge with the Floridan aquifer is it happens to be what's called brackish water. However, the treatment process for brackish water is well established, proven, predictable, and stable. A process called reverse osmosis, RO, or membrane treatment, it's widely used and safely and effectively done to treat the water. The city intends to pursue this type of treatment technology for this water in the future. So what we are doing is bringing the expert panel's recommendations to a close. Again, there was an incident, we convened, we learned, and now this is the final step. The panel recommended the application to the South Florida Water Management District for that fluoride aquifer. The district is what manages all our water resources around here. We have actually submitted this past September an application to the district for a 50-year permit to use water from the fluoride aquifer that would supplement our current water use. Looking forward, the city will explore options to treat that new water and improve our supply resiliency and redundancy as part of what we call our adaptive water supply plan. After comment review exchanges with the district, we understand, is moving forward with our application. Most recently, we've been, past couple of weeks, exchanging a lot of information with them, talking with them, and we believe we're very, very close. The last deadline actually was on Friday, and I'm happy to report that at this point, they had no further comments on our application. I don't want to go much further than that because that's all I do know. But we are very much looking forward to the opportunity to receive that permit from the district. So what we expect is that with that right granted by the district to use the fluoride aquifer, as I call it, it's a very deep groundwater source and used by many municipalities as a primary source of drinking water. For example, we won't be alone. With Palm Beach County, Lake Worth Beach, Town of Jupiter, Village of Tequesta, Seacoast Utility Authorities, Martin County, South Martin Regional Utilities, and on and on. Many communities here in Florida utilizes the fluoride aquifer as their source. As I said earlier, the treatment technique is well established, well proven. So we're not going to be breaking new grounds, although there are constant improvements in technology that is making reverse osmosis membrane type treatments even more and more efficient than they have been in the past. So I just want to say that our water journey, it does continue. Whoops. Well, I did have a question, but anyway, I'll leave it at that. Let me go back one quick second. What I'll do is here is, as far as it goes, so what we're looking forward to is after we receive this permit from the district, what we're looking to do is developing an additional planning strategy. What we'll be doing is looking to our consultants to help us as far as well siting and development, infrastructure that might be needed to move that new well water from where the wells might be chosen. We'll have to figure out what treatment might be necessary, where that treatment might be located. We'll be having to figure out what this all is going to cost us, what opportunities may exist for grants, for financing, for low interest loans. And ultimately, we want to be able to do is get all this water to be able to provide more of a robust, more diverse water to our customers so that we don't have challenges of, oh my God, what happens in the what if? In our business, it's always a what if scenario. So we are constantly diligently looking at what do we have in place to make sure that we don't have that what if scenario, that we already monitor it through our work with Darrell. He is our Assistant Director of Public Utilities. He's involved in the day-to-day business of making sure that water from its source all the way through to your drinking is available and is safe, and that's the things that keep him up at night. But really, we're looking for a stepped approach to our future developing well capacity, bringing wells online as we can, and figuring a way to keep all the costs so the water is affordable to all. The intent is to have, again, a vision of a robust, resilient supply with the added benefit to our customers of diversity in supply by adding the aquifer to our sources and then improving the treatment so that we have a new improved membrane treatment to all that would ensure high quality, safe drinking water to all our customers today and into the future. So with that, it's the end of my presentation. I tried to be very, very brief, taking what is otherwise a rather complicated subject, but I feel at this point that's what we here are the professionals, and we'll answer any questions that you might have about our supply. I hope I just give you a general overview of where we are with this at this time. So, Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Let me make sure I understand. This recent application, the South Florida Water Management District, was done pursuant to the recommendation of this expert panel.
Correct. Yes, that is correct.
And so this is a proactive measure. We're planning proactively.
Exactly.
It is not, we're not reacting to a perceived dire shortage in the next year, the next 5 years, because of all the growth that the city is experiencing. This is something that was recommended to the city to come up with a long-term alternative water supply solution. Is that
That
correct?
is correct. As I said earlier, right now, the city has available over 47 million gallons of water a day. We're only using about 30 on an average day. So we currently have sufficient capacity for today and into the future. What we're doing is taking the expert panel's recommendation and going forward. We spent a lot of effort to do that recommendation with the expert panel, and we feel it's a very important thing for the future of our city and those communities that we also serve water to.
When you use the term long-term alternative water supply, define long-term. Are we talking 5 years, 10 years, 100 years?
Well, I mean, if you think of it, it's, as I understand, Mr. Flagler was here in the 1920s, and here we are 100 years later. From the vision that he had, now we're looking for that next 100 years.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
just to give you an example, in our application, it's required that a population figure be presented annually. And there are models that they require us to use to apply that. So yes, we're projecting out, as I told you, our permits for a 50-year permit, and we project out to, what was it, 2073? Just in our application alone. So this is a long-term matter, and we are looking for a long-term staggered approach to implementing this new supply.
Okay, all right. So again, and this is consistent with best practices for folks in your industry. It was a recommendation of our expert panel that I convened, and so we actually are we're acting consistent with best practices and the recommendations.
That's correct. Thank you. Yes.
All right. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Baduzzi.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I think this is one of the better overviews that I've had in the 4 or 5 years that I've been a commissioner. The question I have, and I'm really happy to see that our permit application with South Florida Water Management District and other entities is moving forward, and it sounds like in a very positive manner. I think it's been a long time coming that we make sure that we secure an alternative to surface water for the future, especially with the potential pitfalls with using surface water that we saw recently in the last couple of years. Question I have for you is, I think I read somewhere that there was a capacity request, and I believe it was at 50 million or so gallons per day that we requested from the district?
So part of the application and the projection into the future years is to determine what will be the future needs of our city and the communities that we serve. So it's tied into the population trend projections from accepted models, population modeling. So yes, there is actually I believe it's 67, Darrell?
The 50 million gallons per day is the finished water that we're looking for. Right now, we're permitted for 47.3, so we were, for treatment, that's what we were looking at really to build a comparable plant. The actual efficiency of the reverse osmosis, what Victor was getting at, is about 75%, so we lose about 25%. So the actual allocation would have been more than the 50, if that's what they grant. We're waiting to see.
So that's refined water, the 50 million gallons, because there is always 25% or so waste when you utilize reverse osmosis. I assume that waste goes right back into the ground, or do we use it for other purposes?
A part of it could go back into the treatment process, go back in, and hopefully, through the efficiencies, and some of it will ultimately be wastewater, wasted, yeah.
Which would go deep down, deep injection wells, right from the plant, the drinking water plant. So that's the biggest, most frequently used method versus sending it to the wastewater plant.
Thank you. And one follow-up question?
Yes.
So we're currently utilizing a certain amount of water. I think you said it was 40-some million gallons per day.
Roughly 30 on average.
30. Okay. Do we foresee this supplementing our surface water supply in the future, or do you ever foresee us completely transitioning to a deep water well aquifer source as opposed to using or relying on surface water?
So again, that's a crystal ball taking out. I will tell you that what we're looking to do with our application is do it in increments of roughly 10 million gallons. There's no real magic to that particular number. It was a reasonable approach to matching potential well capacity with just where we think we might be in the future. What we're looking to do is is start, and, again, assuming that we're able to get that permission from the district, and do a blending. But we don't really know what the future might bring to the city. We don't know what might changes might happen with all sorts of the dynamics of the world that we live in. So what we want to do is make sure we can, if necessary, and if the future continues going that way, have the opportunity to draw water. And it might be, we might find that ultimately taking the Florida aquifer, because of its quality and its consistency, may also offer more efficient opportunities for the city to treat and be able to help control those costs, independent of the high infrastructure costs that we know that might cost to develop it, but recognize once we do that, we still have to provide and treat that water on a daily basis. So what we're looking to do, and that's where our consultants can definitely help us into the future, is where is that balance going to be between, do we go with a blending, which is what we're visioning at this point, and then ultimately we might have to transition to a full aquifer if that's where it goes into the future.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward?
Thank you. And this was a very helpful presentation. I appreciate it. So we're talking about we haven't hit maxes. What is the max population given the growth within the city and the county? What does that look like as far as our own supply versus the aquifer? It sounds like there's plenty of growth to be had, but do you guys know those numbers?
Darryl or Jim?
What we did is the Water Management District typically publishes population data out. They were out to 2045 when we started this process. We used some other references and took it out to 2073. The big deal is seeing where we're at on our allocations that we currently have under our permit, which is really a 10-year lookout. That's all the agency asks us to look 10 years ahead, and all that's about building more capacity. So as we're looking way out at 2073 there, the district came back to us. They actually hired another consultant, actually their consultant, what is it, Beamer?
Beaver, yeah.
To look at our numbers, and it was kind of neat to see that we were within 2% of their population projections. So I was real happy to hear that, because this population number has been a real nightmare for us. They use the population and the amount of water that goes out the plant to determine what they call a per capita factor, gallons per person. It's a pretty fuzzy number. But in the end, our current permit was set at 272 gallons per person per day. We multiply that by the population projections out, and that tells us how much water, raw water and finished water we would need.
So I just want to caution you on that number, though. Recognize that it's not a physical quantity individually we all might use. It's just it's not an exact science, but it's a rough number that's used to help guide the relationship between population and treatment and or source opportunity or capacity. Because there are so many other factors that come into that, all about water use. Are you a community that's a residential community, or are you a community that has businesses or a lot of factories, a lot of restaurants? So it's not something that somebody said, oh my God, geez, they use X number of gallons. It's not. It's just well, almost like a term of the art, if you will, that's used to help just guide some of that goes in the future.
Using the 2073 population numbers as a model, did we have sufficient water under our current water supply system? Or does that trigger the flip over to an alternative in 2073 even?
So about 20, I think one of the charts I'm looking at is look roughly on the population projection. Again, these are all models, so
Understood.
take it, I keep saying it's a model. But it looks like roughly 2060 is where our current allocation and the population trending models intersect, and it's roughly about 2060 or so. So theoretically, if everything was worked the way models work, it would be about 2060 where we would have that challenge of our available supply and the population. We would then have to say, oh my God, what do you do? So
hence, here we are in 2024, looking at that 2060 window, but we're already planning, well ahead of time for an alternative water supply before we even get close to that 2060 window.
Yeah, we don't want to lose sleep on,
No.
we want to make sure we have water available. I mean, it's the basics.
We don't want to be in 2055 trying to figure out what we're going to do in 5 years, and that's not
Absolutely
where we
not.
are.
No.
And I'm sorry, Commissioner, I did kind of step on your time.
No.
Go ahead.
I
know you
appreciate
had some
that follow-up. It was a different question, but I appreciate that follow-up. Because again, water is so important, and I was also wondering about security. when it comes to our water supply. Obviously, we don't have clean water, we don't have a clean source, we're SOL. So what is that more secure, going with the aquifer versus surface water? Or do we have plans in place when it comes to making sure that we aren't susceptible to any security issues with our water supply?
So water supply security, there are two different areas I can go with that, but from purely from a supply perspective, surface water, by nature, it's surface, it's on the top, it's on the ground. Don't know what tomorrow could bring, what can happen. The Floridan aquifer, as I mentioned, in our area, it's generally was about 1,000 foot deep or so that we would have, and it's in an area with what's called confined layers. We can talk all about the geology. Actually, I have Jim Anderson, who is one of the professionals. He's a professional geologist and been very helpful in far as modeling and talking about this. But basically, it's from what historically an old water. It's I don't know how many years, but it's well locked in a certain geological formations that, to the extent that we know now, is resilient from surface water intrusions, these types of pollutants that might come down. That's one of the benefits to that water when I talk about its resiliency and its quality, its consistent quality. That's why in the future we're looking towards this aquifer as a more reliable source, and even as opposed to, I mentioned earlier, our surficial aquifers, which are much shallower, and those are much more susceptible to all sorts of things because of their proximity to the less confined, to the less shallower areas where you've got different soil characteristics. So, almost, anything going into the ground can get into the aquifer. So going down to this deeper one is a much more secure and safer environment.
Was that the kind of security you were talking about, Commissioner?
Not really, but.
Well, I can go into the other security from our water treatment plant perspective. Security from an intrusion perspective or any types of security from our systems. We have two different types of things. Now, there's our plant itself is a secure, it's a, what is the level, what security? With the Homeland Security, if it's a Homeland Security facility. And we have all our various systems in place. We constantly work closely with our IT department here to make sure that we're isolated from any potential intrusions. We have backups, and we have different types of controls so that we don't have anything happening within our system. And Darrell, you might want to talk a little bit more on.
I think what you want to hear is that the water coming out of the deep aquifer is less vulnerable than the surface water. Surface water people have access to. We don't talk about vulnerabilities in public. We don't give anyone any clues what they can do. So, but yes, this is a more secure water source for us in the long run. So, is that it? Okay.
No problem. Sorry.
Madam City Administrator, you.
Yeah, I just want to just say the commission can take comfort in the fact that we are well secured. Because of the sensitivity, that's not something that we will go into detail, but you can be confident that our water system, our water supply is well secured.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Baduzzi?
I'll just follow up briefly, if I can, on the water security, but I won't go into too much detail. But, the vulnerabilities, as I would see, is that it's a big system, and going all the way out to Lake Okeechobee. And I do know that you have taken steps, that the water utilities has taken steps to make sure that we can patrol all the way out to the L8 canal. I don't know if the commission even knows or the public knows that the city owns the M5 canal all the way out to the L8 canal. So 4 miles west to Seminole Pratt Whitney Road, we actually own. And we now have law enforcement patrol capability all the way out the M canal in conjunction with the sheriff's office, which kudos to our police department and to water utilities for taking those steps to be able to actually physically patrol our water supply all the way out the M5. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
What? Can I make one comment?
Go ahead, Darrell.
Since June of 2021, we've not had a detection of the cyanotoxin in our drinking water. In 2022, with the operating plan that's in place right now, which was actually just the well fields, the 20 wells that we had, we were able to manage the levels in the lakes to below the health advisory level. And last year with treatment, we were less than 50% of the health advisory level. And these are important. The 50% the 100%, the 200, because there are triggers in our plans on both the strategies that we talked about a couple years ago, the monitoring gets increased more rapidly, as well as our treatment increases. So we've been real happy. Mayor, the expert panel did me well. I just, again, thank you for that.
Yeah, and also, we're more transparent, right? Don't we have a dashboard?
Yes.
That people can access, that can talk about the levels, and so we're being much more transparent to the public when we have these situations. That dashboard is pretty much real time.
Right. Weekly, we send out a report to our counterparts in the towns, the district, the DOH, and the DEP of what levels are, even when they're non-detect coming into the plant. They get a report, and some of them are already getting to the, I don't want to say it anymore, but life's tough. They took us to task, and now they gotta.
Now, if the public wants to see another, because I know we distributed or made it, had access to the panel's report, is there a place on our website where they can, a link or something, or they can contact us to order it?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
still there online.
All right.
Print it out.
So if anyone under the sound of my voice would like a copy of, I know we've had a lot of people move in to our city since the report was finalized, but if they would like a copy of the report, they can access it through our website, and it will be available. But it had short-term, mid-term, and long-term recommendations. Short-term and mid-term, I think we've implemented, and what we're talking about here is the long-term is what was filed, is the application that we just recently filed with South Florida Water Management District. So we are taking these recommendations to heart and actually following up on those recommendations. Commissioner Baduzzi.
One last quick question about the cost, because accessing the deepwater aquifer, it's brackish water, it's going to require a significant desalination plant. Have we looked into the feasibility of constructing a new desalination plant and adding that to our, water treatment facility, or is it too soon to even look in that direction?
So that's part of the future, that's part of our next step as far as our planning goes. Now, it's you also, just again, put things into perspective, it's brackish water, so there's a distinction between, at least in the common terminology, brackish and desalination. Well, the actual effect is desalinating that water. Remember, we're talking brackish water, not sea salt, so it's just a level of water. But yeah, that's really our next thing, is trying to understand what the current numbers are, and it can be high. Wells can be into the multi-million just to dig the well, but the benefit is with the treatment technology improving, we're hoping that technology can also have a corresponding price point where it's not quite as out of reach as it had been historically.
But the first step is getting access to those, and hence the application.
Yes. I couldn't go forward if I don't have
There
an
you go.
access.
There you go. So this is a first step that we're taking, and once we know what our allocation can be, then we can start looking at what the treatment options might be, costs, et cetera. Okay. Any other questions, comments, commissioners? All right. Thank you. It's a very good report. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, I don't have anything under mayor's matters. I know it's been kind of a long meeting, and I've asked a lot of questions, and I think I've gotten most of my questions, all of my questions answered. So, commissioners, anything for the good of the order from any of you? Okay, well, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your patience.